Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. On the show, I interview Aleksandra Olenska. Aleksandra has been in Paris for many years, and she worked for such big brands as Chanel, Celine, and Vanessa Bruno as a creative director. We talk about what it's like to work in the style world in Paris and what she's doing today. So welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi, Crystal. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really well, in spite of the grey weather in Paris. I'm feeling sunny and happy to be here.
Yeah, the typical fall in Paris, it's just, the leaves are changing, which is quite beautiful too, though. We'll take the no sunshine.
Right, and I'm so glad that the Tuileries is open again after the Olympics so that we can have lovely walks through the leaves and hot chocolate.
I was missing that area too. We got totally blocked with the balloon, but now we're free again to pass through the Tuileries. But I want to go back to the beginning of where you're from and what brought you to Paris.
I love Paris. I think it's so beautiful and such a pretty place. And I'd always loved coming for Fashion Week. I worked as a fashion director for an art and fashion magazine in London, and I was styling for Vogue and all of these things, all of these different magazines, Harper's. And so I'd come over for Fashion Week, and I had lots of friends here. And actually, I'm really attracted to beauty, and I feel very drawn to places where you can feel the history around you. So Paris, with all of its natural beauty, and, it wasn't bombed during the war, unlike Poland. My family is Polish. So it is very, very beautiful. And I used to come for Fashion Week. And then I was supposed to move to New York for work, and I had the sort of job opportunity of a lifetime. And then my father got very sick. And so I didn't want to be an 8-hour plane ride away. I wanted to stay in Europe where I could see him, quite quickly and spend some time with him before he died. He had quite an aggressive form of cancer. So I did the right thing, and so I just moved to Paris instead because I had friends here and found it beautiful. And then I got offered a job at the French fashion brand Vanessa Bruno, and things started to fall into place. I love it.
It's so good that you could be there for your family too. I mean, that's the scariest thing for me, being so far from the States. I'm like, please, parents, don't get sick, You want to be there. That's one of the things we don't really talk about as expats, is like people do get sick and you want to be there to take care of them.
Yeah, they do. And I think that, phases in life change as well. And I think that's what's beautiful about life, is that our priorities can change at different points in life. Up until that moment, my career had been everything to me. I was one of those career obsessed women. And then suddenly everything changed. So I think when the time comes, you will do what's right for you as well. And that will be the right thing.
Exactly. And it sounds like you've still created this beautiful life living in Europe and now Paris. And you worked as a creative director for many years. Talk a little bit about that. What is a creative director? I feel like many people don't even understand fully what a creative director does.
Yeah, so a creative director can be many different things. And in fact, it is a bit of a confusing term. I agree with you. So for me, a creative director is somebody that gives the design direction and sort of the branding direction for a fashion brand or any other brand as well. For me, it's been within the realm of fashion and luxury, but you could have a creative director, for a phone company, for instance, or a lighting company. So it's really about guiding the team towards a shared vision of a shared visual identity of that brand for that season. So you have to sort of bear in mind the brand values and sometimes change them as well. And the idea of the woman of the collection for that season and the brand identity of a woman. What's the Chanel woman, for example, would be totally chic and very elegant and Parisienne, whereas the Celine woman right now is much more young and kind of a young, slim Parisian girl wearing her jeans, walking along the Seine. So they're very different ideas of a Parisian girl. So as the creative director, it's up to you to sort of redefine that vision of femininity or masculinity or different genders every season, and to sort of tweak it. What's the theme and the inspiration of that season? What's that girl doing that season? Is the collection based on the Parisian girl, going to the Arctic Circle, for example, or you've got to sort of fantasize what she's doing and then think about the practical application for that. How is that inspiration going to change into the reality? How does it translate to every aspect of a brand identity, from the clothes to the shoes, to the makeup, to the catwalk show, to the publicity materials, to the visual merchandising? Of course, you don't do everything, but you guide your teams and you work and you collaborate with others to achieve your vision. Does that help?
Oh, definitely. And that is a lot to think about. I mean, how do you even begin to decide what this girl is doing, for the season?
I'm a massive researcher. I've always worked on this fine line between art and fashion. And one of my jobs moons ago was to work for an art and fashion magazine. So I got to work with some of the world's top art photographers. And I've always been this person that has loads of art books on my bookshelves. And I collect art photography books and art photography. And I'm always going to galleries. So there's just boundless inspiration out there. Even in real life as well, looking at the way that people wear their clothes. I'm fascinated by that. And for me, it's really important to engage the fantasy of fashion, but also with what people really want to wear. There's no point in just doing, for me at least, there's no point in just doing something crazy that expresses the zeitgeist or, the air of our times. It also has to look good on a real person.
Yeah, and it's interesting to talk about that because it is Fashion Week right now as we're recording this.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you look at some of the styles or even, some of the street style from some of the models and you're like, there's no way the average person could wear that. You just think like, oh, I could not go out in that. But like, what are your feelings on that? Like maybe it is to like, switch things up in life and you can wear that. Or is it also just like wearing art in the street kind of thing?
I love that question. Thank you. So I really think that it's each to their own and everybody should use fashion as a means of self-expression to feel great, right? Because there's enough sadness in the world and we don't need to be sad about our clothes or the way that we express ourselves. But one thing that does make me smile is the idea of the model off-duty look, because the key to the model off-duty look is to be a model. And, most of us are not models. So even if we try and wear something simple and nonchalant, like a pair of jeans and a button-down shirt, in the same way as the model does, we're never going to look like that. So I think for me, it's more powerful for people to find their own personal style and then be able to tweak it for different situations. And that can mean experimenting with some more avant-garde pieces. I love accessories for messing around, incorporating little bits of more trend-driven, more arty pieces, as you say, and push yourself. It's always fun to try things out, right? Why not? See how you feel in something a little bit more crazy or a lot more crazy. You don't have to buy it. You can just try it on and see how you feel, because you never know, one might surprise yourself,
Yeah, and I also find it so interesting by what becomes popular, that year or that season. I mean, you've worked in this industry for years. Maybe you're that one even pushing some of the trends. Like, it's like, how does it decide, like, today is pilgrim chic, when everyone's wearing, like, the big hats or dressing kind of homeless or whatever, I feel like, who decides, where does this all stem from?
I love this idea of pilgrim chic. That's a funny idea. Gosh, I went to a convent school though, and unfortunately the idea of any sort of religious chic convent girl reminds me of just reminds me of the nuns, which wasn't necessarily a pleasantry. So trends are really fascinating because actually fashion is a cultural reflection. So the trends really come from what's going on in the world, in society, in the socio-economic climate, in art and culture, in films. And it's sort of all distilled, all of that sort of is distilled into garments and the way that people hold themselves, because fashion trends aren't just about the clothes that people wear. They're also about the way that people wear them, right? Which is what styling is, the way that people wear their clothes, and also the way that people, hold themselves, how we walk, how we use our body language. This is quite trend driven as well, of course, as hair and makeup. So no, designers don't sit. Sometimes I get asked, do designers all sit in a room at the beginning of the season? No, they don't. But I do think that they often, fashion designers in the West at least, are mostly in the fashion capitals like New York or Paris or London. And so they're seeing a lot of the same things, a lot of the same exhibitions. They're looking at the same kinds of news programs or newspapers or magazines or artists. So it's inevitable that with the same sort of references that are in the media, that are in the zeitgeist, they're going to come up with some similar ideas.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And talk a little bit about, as someone who's worked between Paris and London, when I visit London, I feel like it's kind of more like New York, where people can be a little wilder, a little crazier with their looks. And then Paris always seems like very much like a uniform, like the black or the Chanel. And what are your feelings about that? Like, why do you think that is?
Crystal, you have good questions. So actually, I think this is sort of linked to the previous question. Sometimes there are some crazy moments in fashion. And the concrete example I can think of is when Phoebe Philo worked for Celine, and she launched these fur-lined sandals, commonly known as Birkenstocks, like Birkenstocks with fur. And when they first came out, they were roundly ridiculed by the likes of the Daily Mail. Who on earth would wear these? Why do we need fur-lined sandals in the summer? Oh, they're so ugly. This is so ridiculous. Yes, they are ridiculous. And that's the beauty in it. And I do think you're right. London obviously has this punk heritage that affects all aspects of fashion, even though we have more classical brands, namely Burberry. It is a real hotbed of experimentation and creativity. And the street style in London, as you've rightly said, is a lot more experimental and referencing that punk heritage, though not necessarily in a spiked hair kind of a way. I think the attitude of people in London, I remember in my local supermarket, which was called Sainsbury's, there used to be a man who would frequently be seen in Sainsbury's wearing a purple chiffon, quite transparent dress, I may add, atop his hairy chest, and nobody batted an eyelid, right? That's not to say there isn't bullying and negative things in London, but I do think society is quite open-minded in London, in parts of it anyway. Whereas in Paris, you're right, it is more traditional. And the reason I mentioned those Birkenstocks is it is more traditional and more classical. And that's actually a style that I personally really love. So Paris really resonates with me because while I love creativity, I also just love the simplicity, or the apparent simplicity, we could say, of something like Parisian chic and the sort of history and heritage that goes into that. But what I really love is to take those weird and wacky items like the Birkenstocks and to mix that with the classical. And I suppose that's the British in me. And I think that everybody who loves Parisian chic like me should bring in their own twist. It's not about just fitting into a cookie cutter mold of, a Parisian girl, or the cliche of wearing a beret that people don't actually do. But finding your own twist to it. So to me, it would be something like wearing some like quite ugly shoes, maybe with a little black dress.
I think that's great advice. And I think that so many of us struggle with like finding our style. So obviously you help people do this for a living. You're a style whisperer. But what are some little pieces of advice you offer the everyday person who still doesn't really know their style?
Yeah, so you're right. I've been working as a creative director and a stylist for big brands. and fashion magazines for campaigns and all sorts, Chanel and Vanessa Bruno and Paul Smith and all of this. And now I work with private individuals as well, because as I say, I'm really interested in this connection between, you know, how fashion is presented in the industry and then real life and what people really wear. And I think it's wonderful when you can help somebody to find their personal style. So something I always suggest to people is that they really examine their wardrobe. You become a wardrobe detective and really think about, what do you love now and where are you at in your life now? So if you're anything like me, for example, you know, I'm somebody that runs around Paris. You know, I take the metro and, you know, it's getting harder and harder to drive in Paris. I walk a lot. It's a wonderful walking city. And I just love going for walks around the Palais Royal here where I'm based. So I need quite practical shoes, for example. And I also want to keep really warm and cozy, especially in the winter. So this is the practicalities and the reality of my life. But when I look in my wardrobe, when I do some wardrobe detective work, I see that I actually have quite a lot of gowns, like as if I'm attending gala events every day.
I love that.
And so actually, I think the first stop is to kind of think about, what do you really need from your life? And, you know, sometimes myself, like any other lady, I can go into a store and go in and think, okay, I need to buy some practical shoes for wandering around Paris. And then I come out with another pair of high heels, right? Which I just don't need, you know. Yes, I can wear them around my flat. I can wear them in bed or whatever it might be for seduction. But honestly, I just don't need any more high heels. So I think the first step is kind of awareness of what our real life looks like. And is our wardrobe really relating to our real life? And then the next thing I would say is to really think about what you love and to look around you and see, you know, what books do you like and what artists do you like and which TV shows do you like and what celebrity style do you like and why? So be a bit analytical and think, why do I like these things? And maybe try and come up with 3 key words that you think describe things that you like. You know, it could be sophisticated, it could be colorful, it could be happy, it could be fun, it could be glamorous. And it doesn't matter if those 3 words are contradictory, because I think as women, we need to embrace all of the wonderful facets of ourselves and not just put ourselves into a label of, say, oh, I like bohemian chic, you know, or, you know, I like boho style, or I like, you know, I just wear black. I don't think labeling is the answer, but I do think it can be helpful to have a few little words that become our kind of a little mantra, if you like, that can help us. And then to try and make our outfits correspond to those perhaps contradictory words. So it could be that you are a romantic, an elegant romantic rock chick, right? So that doesn't mean that you're going to wear leather top to toe. It might mean that you're wearing some really beautifully tailored suit trousers from Jill Sander with a leather jacket. And on the lapel of the leather jacket, you know, you might have like a Chanel camellia. Do you know what I mean? It's really about mixing different things together, different codes and signifiers.
And how do you find the confidence? Because I think a lot of women struggle too. They're like, I don't know what looks good on me. I'm fat. You know, like, I just want to look skinny. Like, I can't wear something that outrageous. People will think I look stupid. Like, where do you find the confidence to wear the things that you actually maybe would look really great in?
I think the first thing is to try things out, you know, discreetly in a changing room, and to go into shops that maybe you wouldn't normally go into, and to treat it as like a fun exercise. Like, sometimes I go into shops that I really don't like, just to see what happens if I try on something, you know, from Desigual or something like this, which is a brand I'm just not particularly keen on. It's not my style at all, but you never know, right? And actually, sometimes your style needs to evolve, and we get stuck in a bit of a style rut because we're just used to wearing the same things again and again. So sometimes we need to deliberately push ourselves out of our comfort zone, which can be uncomfortable, but we have to just sort of embrace that and say, do you know what? I'm just in a changing room. It doesn't matter. This is fun, and not to treat it as something serious and like, oh no. And the other aspect there is you're talking about size. And I do think a lot of women, especially women over 40 and into 50 and the menopause, you know, our bodies do change. The average woman, you know, does put on weight in midlife and beyond. And that can be quite hard, you know, whatever starting point you come from, and watching ourselves age isn't a happy experience for everybody. So it's, you know, it's too easy to say, oh, we should embrace aging and we should embrace our size, whatever it is. But I would say a few things. I would say find the positive and celebrate the positives about yourself. And everybody's got a positive. It might be, I often use the example in my YouTube videos of, I love my earlobes, and even if it's just your earlobes, then adorn your earlobes, make the most of them, right? Often women, even larger women, often have beautiful wrists or beautiful ankles. Great, show them off, find tailored clothes and get clothes tailored. And, in Paris, we're very fortunate because there's many alteration stores, or retouches as they call them. And when you do buy clothes at whatever price point, try and build in a budget so that you have got an alterations budget, because we should all take it as normal that we will need to have, or that our clothes will look the best if we get them tailored to fit us as we are right now. Again, we're not dressing for some fantasy future body. We're dressing for right now. So embrace your body right now. Get your clothes altered to fit you. Don't worry if clothes, are too big in the store, or like I have a tiny waist, for example, but then I've got really juicy bottom, we could say. So for me, it's always that the waist is too small in comparison to the hips. So I'm always needing to get the waist altered, and that's not a bad thing. That's entirely positive, right? Great. And we can't expect, short of us all walking around in Emperor style pajamas, we cannot expect brands to have clothes that fit every single body type. So if we just accept that we can get clothes altered in order for us to feel our best, then that's a good start. Try things out of your comfort zone, embrace your positives. And also, I would say, and this is something, again, I talk about in my videos, is embrace the power of the horizontal line. So in a nutshell, this is to say, do not put a horizontal line across the areas of your body that you are not happy with. So, for example, if you've got wide hips and you don't like your hips, and I say that because, some women, like Kim Kardashian, has really large hips, but it's fabulous look, right? But if you do not like your big hips, then don't put a horizontal line across your big hips, meaning don't wear, for example, jeans that start on the hips, right? Because that would be a big line across your hips. Try and wear something maybe that goes to the waist, the natural waist, for instance.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that's like great little tips that you can just do today.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like working for these big brands. You worked for Chanel, Celine, Vanessa Bruno. Talk a little bit about what that was like.
I've tended to work with brands that are quite feminine, and every brand is quite different. But my personal style is quite feminine and elegant, so it makes sense that I would have worked with the brands that I have worked with. I mean, I've had a really great career and I've really enjoyed it, and it's extremely challenging. But the great thing, that I've loved about working for the fashion industry is that it's ever changing, right? Which makes it a bit exhausting sometimes. I remember a point in my life where I was just traveling nonstop, which sounds incredibly glamorous, and then your assistant meets you at the airport and you changes your suitcase and you go off to the next place. But in reality, it can really easily lead to burnout, not only in this career, I know in many different careers. But it is a very demanding career, fashion. It's very creative, and I love the creative aspect of it, and making beauty is a wonderful way to make your living. But yeah, it can be very demanding.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something that not many people think about when they think of your job, saying, oh, wow, she's working for Chanel, she's creative director, it must be so glamorous. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with a lot of big personalities too.
Yeah, that's right. Big personalities. And as I say, it's just that because the seasons change in fashion, and now with the internet and online sales, customers are demanding more and more and more clothes. They expect to see different things in the shop every time, different things online all the time. And I do think that the whole industry, not just the individuals in it, but is in, in danger of burning out. We don't need that much stuff in the world. We don't need constant products. We don't need to be constantly shopping. I think, this idea of the consumer society, which fashion very much fuels, I'm not sure it's going to continue. And from a sustainability perspective as well, I'm just not sure we need that much stuff. And I think now there's a booming secondhand market. Even in Paris, there's some amazing secondhand shops here where you can get your vintage designer goods that are really good quality. And I love this because it still helps you to play with your style in a little bit less of a judgmental manner, because you don't feel like, oh, I have to follow the trends, or, is this expensive piece going to last me from season to season? Or, oh, if I just get this cheaper piece, from H&M or whatever, is it going to fall to bits? This secondhand, I love it because it allows you to invest in pieces that are going to last a little bit longer, but at a lesser price point. Also, I'm often asked, is my job, somebody said to me the other day, oh, are you like Emily in Paris? And, they used to say, is it like The Devil Wears Prada? And I used to say, no, it's much worse than The Devil Wears Prada.
No.
But is it like Emily in Paris? Do you know, I've got a funny story, actually. I went to film my YouTube channel about 6 months ago in my neighborhood, and I went to my local cafe and it was closed because they were filming Emily in Paris. And I said, okay, never mind, we'll just go to the Palais Royal and we'll do some filming there. And I was walking on the street and I was like, the street feels weird. And they'd put down like fake cobbles to film Emily in Paris. And they were like all rubbery, obviously for health and safety. So just for the record, it is a guilty pleasure. I do love that show, but and Sylvie Gratto, I think, looks incredible. But no, my life is not like Emily in Paris.
I think that's one of my favorite things about the show is because everything's so beautiful. Like, it's fun to look at the clothes. It's fun to look at the streets. Yeah. And they're literally putting down fake plastic streets. So we know. We know what they're doing. I love it. So talk a little bit about your favorite place to shop in Paris.
My favorite place to shop in Paris. As I mentioned, I do love going around the Palais Royal. I think it's a beautiful walk and such a sort of human size. And I love being there because I feel like I'm really in the historical heart of Paris. And there's a great secondhand shop there called Didier Ludo, where they've got an accessories shop that's really great. And I bought my first ever Chanel jacket from there. So I've got very fond memories, and they were so nice to me when I bought it. And they've got such a great selection of like museum quality vintage pieces from all different eras. But as I say, the accessories collection there is really great. And on the Palais Royal as well, there's a beautiful Serge Lutin's fragrance store, which is just a gem. It's like a jewel box of a store. It's all hand painted in different shades of purple. And it's a very magical experience to go in. I think if we're going to share our hard-earned money, which is part of our energy. If we're going to do that and if we're going to invest in things, personally, I think it's better to invest in pieces that we really love that last for longer. That's, the very French sort of advice, but I do believe in that. Then I also think that the retail experience for that should be very special, because I think, it's an energetic exchange between you and the shopkeeper and the shop and the brand and your money that you're giving them. So I think all of that should be positive, because then those positive memories go into the garments. And, that's why it's so special to buy something when you come to Paris or on holiday. There's also a great, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's just on Rue des Petits Champs, which is around the back of the Palais Royal. And there's a lovely independent glove store, for example, where they also sell belts. I would recommend that for anybody. And of course, I love the Bon Marché, which is a wonderful department store now owned by LVMH, but it's still retained its sort of, it's not a huge sprawling department store full of tourists. It still feels quite intimate, very Parisienne. They've got a great art collection as well. They do lovely events. And you can always go to the Grande Épicerie and have a nice cake as well when you're feeling a bit tired. So yeah, they're my favorite places.
I love it. That's a great list for you guys' next trip to Paris. And also, you are launching a French style course where women can work with you one-on-one. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I've been meaning to do this for a long time. In fact, I meant to launch it at the beginning of this year, but, I've had a death in my family and I just wasn't really feeling up to it. And I think, when I work with, especially private clients, I really want to give it my all and be in the right place energetically. So I sort of postponed that. So I'm going to be launching in the fall, and I just wanted to share so many people contact me and say, how can we work with you? And I think it's lovely to have women that love Paris and Parisian style to be together. So I'm doing an online course. So we're going to have a group component, and it's going to be like a French style course for fashion, but also giving tips for the home. And I think a lot of French fashion, as in style, is also about the attitude and the way in which the clothes are worn. So I want to incorporate all of these different aspects for women that want to inject a bit of French style into their wardrobe wherever they are in the world, but also to to bring their own style, their own je ne sais quoi, we could say, into that sort of French style. Like I said earlier, so that it's not just a copy of a French woman, but it's your own version of French chic. So from that perspective, we're going to do like group sessions, which should be a lot of fun. And then there's little exercises and things to do, all very fun and lighthearted. And then everybody is going to be offered one-on-one sessions as well within the course. So it's like going to be a very cost-effective way to work with me. It's probably going to be the most cost-effective way to work with me in the coming year. So to have group sessions and individual sessions so that people can really make the most of it, have fun and meet other women. Because also I think the older we get, the harder it can be to find the time to celebrate ourselves and meet other like-minded women. So, yeah, that's what it's all about.
And finding people with common interests, right? Like this is a great way to do that. And it's online, so you don't have to be here, correct?
Exactly. And then we'll change the times of the sessions depending on when, what time suits most people. And then obviously with one-on-one sessions, people will be able to book them at a time that suits them. So yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to it, actually.
It sounds fantastic. And I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Where can people connect with you, learn more, and follow along?
So if people haven't watched my YouTube video already, my YouTube channel, then the channel is Aleksandra Olenska. It's just my name, but my name is Polish, so it's spelled with a KS, Aleksandra, and my family name is Olenska, Olenska. And that's also my Instagram handle. I'm just about getting back onto Instagram. I don't want to be a slave to social media. I know it's so important, but I also think that living is more important than posting. So quite often, I'll quite forget to take photographs of what I've been doing or what's around me. But I am on Instagram, and I do love hearing from my followers. So please feel free to DM me, message me on Instagram, or drop me some comments on my YouTube channel.
Wonderful. We'll share all of that in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today. Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.